You're listening to the Deep End Podcast, a ministry of Hermitage Church, where we have a conversation about Sunday's sermon and chat about ways we can go a little deeper in our faith. I'm Hunter Steinmetz, and I'm one of the pastors here at our church. Every week, we will listen in on a conversation with the preacher from this week about deeper theological pieces of the sermon and suggested practices on how we can embody this word and allow it to seep into our skin. We hope that this podcast will become a part of your weekly faith journey on your drive into work, as you do the dishes, or as you sip your coffee on Tuesday mornings. Thanks for jumping into the deep end with us. Let's listen in on this week's conversation. Welcome back to the Deep End Podcast. I know it's been a couple weeks. We had some technical difficulties. So for the last 2 weeks, there was not a podcast. You didn't just miss it. But we're back this week. This is Hunter.
And I'm Brad.
So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Ezekiel and really what heart means in the Hebrew understanding of the heart. And because that's kind of the whole series we've been in, Ezekiel, a new heart. So that's where we'll be spending our time talking about a new heart and the new spirit that God is giving to his people.
Yeah, so we'll not jump to, but we hear that word in Ezekiel 36, 26 through 27. I will give you a new heart. So there's that word heart, and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. So there's kind of like this repetition of this word that in our cultural context kind of can have different connotations, but it's very different from a scriptural lens.
Yeah. So before we end up talking about what like the theology of new heart even means, I think it's better that we understand, or not maybe better, but it's important that we understand what the word heart meant to Ezekiel's original audience. So we're going to wait on the theological until we can pay attention to like the linguistic. What do they mean by that word?
Yeah, and it's a very broad meaning, but we often, like when we think about it, when we hear heart, we usually are connecting it to emotions. So like a feeling that jumps up. Oh, that's my heart. Like I'm feeling this thing. And we can equate it to like Valentine's Day, this like lovey feeling of falling in love, those sorts of things.
Which is just, so language fascinates me. If you have talked to me in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been super fascinated by it. But it's even like when you think of romance, like the root word of that is Roman. It's Rome, like it's a romantic idea. So this is, it's at the time of Jesus, but it's much past the Hebrews. So, or at least the Hebrew language when it was like active and working. So we have to pay attention to even like the way progression of thought in human history works. And that might sound boring to you, but it's also important that it helps us to understand what they were meaning when they were saying it. So this Hebrew word is pronounced lev. Sometimes it's written levav, but it's more than just emotions. It's much broader than that. The heart was considered more like the center of the person's whole inner life, and we may even think that nowadays, but it's still a little bit different to them.
It's interesting, and kind of going back to connecting it to how we kind of think of heart in the emotional Valentine's Day way. I think it can be not a temptation, but it can be very second nature to read into the text kind of our understandings of the word. So like when you mentioned it's so much, it's broad. It's so much broader than just like these things that we understand. We're kind of like flipping it and allowing the text to speak out towards us, and it includes, like you said, like the whole of our inner life, which is our thoughts, it's our will, it's our desires, moral choices, memory. So the heart kind of was like this control center to who we were, to our being.
Yeah, and I don't know that because like when you think of heart nowadays, it's more like passion or follow your heart, things like that. It's like like you're saying, it's more like you feel. But there's a lot more attached to it for them. The heart is the very It's the center of who you are, both in thinking and doing, in will, all of the things. So the Hebrew understanding of the heart actually probably has more to do with thinking than we do, because this is this predates Leonardo da Vinci, all of the studies about the human being, the obsession with medicine, and all of those things, right? So they're kind of just going based off what they see and observe.
Yeah.
And so that was just the understanding of where those things came from. So even if we would go to Deuteronomy 6, this is the Shema, the love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your strength. It's not just saying love him when you feel good or when the key change hits and you feel something inside of you, right? It means to choose to love him with your whole self, all of your thoughts, your desires, your decisions. So your thinking, your wills, your emotions, all of that. But I feel like we should talk about the Shema too, that you should love the Lord with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your strength. Soul, the soul is actually, this is not a Hebrew idea. Yeah, this is a Greek idea, which comes much later. And that's just how we translate it.
Like in the way you're saying, is kind of like there's this separate thing that we call our soul. Is that kind of
yeah. Or and just the Greek understanding of the soul, or the word soul is a Greek thought. It is not a Hebrew thought. Right? Yeah. So the word there is actually nephesh. Yeah. Which means throat. Yeah. So if we're directly translating, it's love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your throat. Yeah.
Which and even in the cultural context, right? That's the throat. I'm putting my hand on my throat right now, but that's where, if something happens to that, you're in trouble, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's what they mean by throat is this is the most vulnerable piece of you. So if you're in battle and something happens to your throat, this is not good. Yeah. So they have no understanding of the jugular veins and arteries and all of that, but they know that it's not good. Yeah. Or if you get punched in the throat, you can't breathe for a while, or whatever it is. So, but what they mean by that is your total, the most vulnerable pieces of you, the very inner piece. And so, because that's kind of how we think of soul today, that's how most English translations translate it. And then strength is the Hebrew word meod, which just means muchness. So it's a lotness. Yeah. So when God sees that and creation is very good, he calls it tov meod. This is very, very good. So muchness, much goodness. Yeah. So it's love the Lord your God with with everything you got. The heart is the lab, is your thinking, your will, all of those things. With all of your throat, which is your vulnerability, the most vulnerable pieces of yourself. That's how you should love God. And then with all of your muchness, which changes a lot of that. But I think the whole purpose of saying that is, it shows that just because the word may be translated that way, it's not exactly the thought behind the word. And so to help us better understand what they mean by those words, we have to understand the thought process behind it.
So having kind of now that foundation for the thought process behind it, when Ezekiel talks about Israel having this heart of stone, he's describing a people whose whole inner life, and really not even to distinguish it that far, but their whole life, their whole being, everything about them has become hardened, has become resistant, has in a way become unresponsive.
Yeah, so let's unpack that a little bit. A heart of stone is just cold, lifeless, immovable. It can't really, or it can't and it doesn't want to respond to God's word, and it can't direct a person to live faithfully.
And that's exactly what Ezekiel saw in the exiles, that their idolatry, and Matt's mentioned this a little bit, but that their idolatry, their injustice, their stubbornness, it wasn't just this kind of bad behavior and God now is trying to correct this behavior. It was evidence that something deep within them was broken, that they're orienting, the compass that was oriented towards God has now become oriented towards something completely different, away from God.
Yeah. And so just take a pause really quick. Yeah. I feel like when we think of heart, we think of love, right? And I think lots of times we think of love as a feeling. And sometimes you'll hear this at weddings. I've heard pastors say before, like we have to get away from this idea that love is a feeling, that love is a choice. You have to choose. There are days where you have to choose to love someone. Like you frustrate me so much, but I vowed to love you, and so even though it's not easy for me, I'm choosing to love you in this moment. So I think maybe that is a little bit more of like how they understood the heart is it is not totally dependent upon feelings. Feelings may be a part of that, but there are days where it's more of the commitment that you have made, and now you live up to it. So when you have a heart of stone, like Ezekiel's saying, Ezekiel, I don't know why I said that weird. You don't care to have the capacity to live up to the vows that you've created, which is what got them in this problem, this trouble in the first place. So now God is promising to do something new and radical, and He's going to remove that heart of stone that they don't care or intentionally are not doing. He's going to give them a heart of flesh that is alive and breathing and new. It's a beautiful image.
Yeah. And it's fun to think about too, and like it's very real even now. Like it's something that can happen to us.
Yeah.
Like this new life.
Yeah, it's not a story. It is a story from the past, but it's also, this is the same God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's still wanting to do this.
Yeah. So the heart of flesh, kind of even pushing this a little bit further.
Speaking of the Greek idea.
Yeah, and you'll have to unpack that a little bit more too with some of because we'll moving into some of the Pauline tradition. So like not about something that's fleshly in a negative sense, Paul sometimes uses, but here it kind of means a soft, alive, responsive, this heart that can beat again, that can respond to God's Spirit.
Yeah. So like right before Jesus comes, there's an empire that takes over the Israelites. It's called the Seleucid Empire, and they end up I'm sorry. Alexander the Great comes, and he takes over everything, and he's kind of the Greek. He's spreading Greek influence everywhere, and then eventually that empire splits into two: the empire, the Ptolemaic Empire, and the Seleucid Empire. And so, but there's like Greek thought and influence spread everywhere. So this is the world that Jesus is born into. This is the world that Paul is born into. So they have Greek philosophy, but they also have their Jewish heritage, which is more of an Israelite Hebrew philosophy and theology. So Paul will use Greek influences because he's talking to a Greek audience and because that is the world that he lives in.
Yeah.
But one of the big pieces of the Greek idea is that the body and soul are separate. And the Hebrews didn't think that because they had no concept of the soul. The body was everything, and it was important.
Yeah.
The body was good. So Paul sometimes uses that Greek, and I know that this is a lot, but I also think it's important that we talk about.
Yeah.
That like in Ezekiel, they don't have this Greek influence.
Yeah.
And so we have lots of Greek influence in America today, and just how thought works. So we are reading the Old Testament like we would read the New Testament or anything from today, and we have to be careful not to do that. So when they're talking about a heart of flesh, it's not like the dirty like unclean body, and that's how the Greeks would have viewed it. Whereas the soul was good and perfect. It is what they're saying is. You get a good flesh instead of stone that's hard and immovable and not worth anything good.
The center is going to be made new.
Yeah.
The center of who you are.
Yeah, and it's alive and it moves and breathes.
Yeah, and I think that's too why we can be like, if I can just think right, like if I can just get this part of my mind to be oriented towards God, like, but the Hebrew understanding wouldn't have been like mind separate from everything else. It's like our whole being can be oriented to God, because there can become real problems when it's like, if I can just think right, you can only think right for so long until something happens in life, and then it throws you off. You're like, well, was I actually? But it's having your whole being reoriented towards.
Yeah, and that you don't compartmentalize like, this is, my thinking is good, but my body is bad. Or because then you end up being like, I didn't want to, but Satan made me do it. You can blame it on something where like we're the whole person. And that's, it's things like this are super, super fascinating to me.
Yeah.
It also, like the giving a new heart of flesh is not self-improvement.
Yeah.
This is the work that God is doing. So just like you're saying, it's not up to me thinking better and just being a better person on my own. God had to remove the heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. Israel cannot do this on their own. You and I cannot do this on our own. This is what God is doing. This is an act of grace from God.
Yeah, and that's where, speaking of it being only God being able to do it, is kind of where the Spirit comes in. So Ezekiel ties the new heart with the gift of God's Spirit. I will put my Spirit within you, Ezekiel says, and cause you to walk in my ways.
And it's covenant language, right? In the Old Covenant, the law was written on tablets of stone, but Ezekiel envisions a time when God's Spirit will write the law on living hearts.
Which has taken my mind even to other places, so it kind of connects it to Jeremiah 31.
Yeah.
With the new covenant where God says, I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts, like living hearts. It kind of connects to that as well.
Yeah, and I think that they're kind of pointing to this in the same direction, that God is the one who is transforming his people from the inside out, and that's happening even now.
Yeah,
it's an ongoing work.
Yeah, which is fun too, to think that it's this continuation. And it matters deeply because it shifts how we think about obedience. It's not just about, like we mentioned, like willpower or external kind of changing our external habits, but it's about transformation.
Yeah, from the inside out. And it's really all kind of rooted in hope that Ezekiel's audience is in exile. They feel like it's all over, that this is the end. And God is saying, hey, I'm doing something new. I'm going to recreate you. I'm going to give you a very new center of who you are, from, like the very center from which you make decisions, from which you choose how you're going to do all of these things. I am changing that part of you. And out of that, flowing out of that, you're going to be a totally new people. And it's just something, it's something that I am doing, God is doing.
It's kind of, even thinking of themes like this resurrection theme, a dead heart becomes alive, a rebellious people become God's people again.
And of course, as Christians, we see this promise fulfilled in Christ, and in Pentecost, the Spirit is poured out, hearts are made new. And Paul actually echoes Ezekiel when he says in 2 Corinthians 5:17 that if anyone is in Christ, that new creation has come.
Yeah, which is so exciting, I think, because it gives us hope. And our tradition is deeply connected to this, too, even in our Wesleyan heritage, where it's like new life, new transformation. It made me think, too, like this re-center of being is kind of like what we would even connect to some of the process we go through as believers. I can't think of the word right now. But when Ezekiel's talking about all of these things, like the new heart, he's not talking about like this emotion, like a hallmark emotion.
Yeah.
But he's talking about God making the very core of human life, every aspect, our thoughts, our desires, our will, reordering and remaking, recreating, that we can actually live in communion with God.
Yeah, that's really good news. And I think that is the good news, that what we could never do for ourselves, that we have, even though we have created or turned our own hearts into hearts of stone, that we've like closed off our desires to things that don't matter. And even kind of what Pastor Matt was preaching from today, this past Sunday, that the shepherds were just getting fat for themselves, but not feeding the sheep. All the ways that they had turned off the part of the covenant that they were supposed to be living with God. God is saying, this is so wrong that you have done this, that your hearts have become stone. But I'm going to give you new hearts because I'm still committed to this covenant with you. And God has promised to do that in us, which is very, very good news.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We're grateful, and we hope you have a good week.